Today I'm going to show you how I turn my fireplace from this to this. Before I show you the technique that I used on my fireplace, I want to start off by saying this is a very doable DIY project. It doesn't require a lot of expensive tools or material, and once you get started, it really doesn't take that long. My wife had been after me for a while to do this to our fireplace, and to be honest, I kept putting it off because I didn't know how I was going to do it. I knew the look that we were after, I just wasn't sure exactly how I was going to get there, and the part that bothered me the most was once you put a coating or of some sort on brick, and there's no going back. And of course I did a bunch of research online, and the technique I'm going to show you today is what I landed on. If you end up enjoying this video and you would like to give it a thumbs up, that would be much appreciated. And also, if you know of someone that wants to do this to their fireplace, please consider sharing this video with them. Maybe they'll get some benefit from it. And one more thing, if you want to see how I replace my existing wood mantle with this reclaimed old beam from a local building, I'll put the link to that video in the description box below. Now enough chatting, let's get to the German schmear. Of course, the first thing I had to do was to remove everything from the mantle and the hearth. As far as prepping the brick, the only thing I did was give it a quick cleaning with a shop vac. I also took this opportunity to clean the firebox itself out. Since I want to cover the entire surface of the brick, I removed the molding underneath the mantle. Next, I took a little time to protect the floors. I knew I was going to be using a drop cloth, but a little extra protection never hurts. I also taped off the walls that butt the fireplace. One of my concerns was how shallow the mortar joints are on the fireplace, but in the end it turned out just fine. I just used a white unsanded tile grout that I got from Lowe's for about 15 bucks, and some of the tools I had on hand were a damp sponge, some rags of course, and a mixer for your cordless drill to mix up the grout, which you don't have to have, you can do this by hand. A couple putty knives, an old paintbrush which I didn't end up using, a couple grout floats that I didn't end up using either, the grout bag, which is a necessity, some painter's tape, and of course a 5-gallon bucket to mix up the grout. I started with a small batch of grout first. I added water and mixed it with the cordless drill until I came up with a consistency somewhere between peanut butter and honey, I guess. You have to keep in mind that the grout has to be the consistency that will squeeze out of the grout bag. Next, I transferred the grout from the bucket into the grout bag with the putty knife. You want to force the grout toward the tip of the bag. I started in a section that I figured would be the least noticeable, and I just started squeezing the grout into the mortar joints. I'm only using a small batch here, but this grout bag works better if you have more grout in it. It makes it easier to squeeze it out. Next, I scraped off the excess mortar with the putty knife, trying to go in the same direction as the mortar joints. I also tried to make sure that the grout filled the entire mortar joint. And don't worry if some of the grout gets on the face of the bricks, that's actually what you want. Next, I took the damp sponge and smoothed the grout out even more, again primarily sticking to the mortar joints. Thought process was if I stick to the mortar joints first, I can always add some more grout to the face of the brick later. This is the first spot that I did on the side where it's not that visible. And I just kind of piped the joints, and then I just kind of scraped it with a putty knife, and then went over with a sponge to kind of even it out. And I think it's kind of the look that we were after. We don't want it to be solid white, but we don't want it to be just the joints either. It's kind of a combination between some bricks showing and some bricks solid. So I think I'm going to keep on with this setup. I then repeated the process. I started by filling in the mortar joints with the grout. I recommend working in sections. I did the face brick around the fireplace itself, and then I did the top and the sides of the hearth separate. And of course I went over the mortar joints with the putty knife to smooth out the grout and make sure there weren't any voids. And went back over them with the damp sponge to smooth out the grout even more. Once I had the mortar joint smoothed out with the sponge, I could go back over the surface of the bricks, adding some grout to give it a little depth. This is where the personal preference comes into play. You can add as much or as little grout as you want to achieve the look that you're after. But remember to go slow, because you can always add more grout later, but you can't take it off. And that's basically how I did this German schmear technique. Again, here's what the fireplace looked like before, and this is after. Lori's on the way home from the grocery store now, and she hasn't seen the fireplace since I did the German schmear. I think it turned out good based on what we looked at and kind of the look I was going for. But of course, my opinion is not the one that matters.
What do you think?
I think it turned out good, but
You like it?
Yeah, but my opinion is not the one that matters.
What?
My opinion is not the one that matters.
But do you like it?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it looks so good. Wow. That totally changed it.